Hey guys, in this episode of Brokers Open Podcast, we're going to talk about sports getting started back up after COVID. So there's mental and there's physical things, and they might be at conflict with each other. We're also going to talk about historical commission rates and what to look for as we come out of this with COVID, and what's probably going to happen so that you can be prepared. All in this episode of Brokers Open Podcast. Let's get started. Justin, buddy, it's Podcast Friday, man. What are you up to?
I tell you what, this is a good podcast Friday as usual, but the weather is gorgeous out. So,
Mhm.
no offense to our watchers and our viewers and listeners, but Matt and I want to get outside today, maybe.
Absolutely, and just stretch our legs a little bit. Throw our arms up in the air like the sound of music, right? Run over the top of the hills singing. It
I'm
is.
getting rambunctious, so I need every escape I can get.
I hear you. I mean, we're still going into the office, right? And some of that has been loosened up a little bit. We're still under, we're still under COVID restrictions,
Yeah,
right? And so, we've still got some of that. We've still got some of that stuff going on and everything. But we gotta, we gotta kind of. It's getting a little bit stir crazy, right?
I mean, I find myself at times getting lax on certain things, like and it's definitely unintentional, but it's like one of those kind of subliminal messages that your mind is kind of pushing out when, like, you're saying to yourself, I've really had enough of this. I want normalcy. I want to see my family. I want to see my friends again. I want to do normal things again. And
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll get into a couple of normal things here in just a couple of minutes, right? We'll have to dig
Yeah.
into those because there's some exciting things happening. It's not just us that are being rambunctious and people are making changes and stuff, but we'll talk about all that in just a minute. So how's the real estate market? What are you seeing with the real estate market? Because we've still been busy. We didn't have a banner
Yeah.
month. We're going into May right now, but we didn't have a banner month. But it was still really busy. There's listings that are being taken. We had a virtual happy hour last night, and on the virtual happy hour, you and I talked about this on our podcast, and whenever we're talking to our agents and anybody that we can bump into, we were both saying, you know, people that the speculative purchasing is going to go away, right? We don't know how
Yeah.
long that's going to be gone. But the people that needed to buy and sell were still buying and selling. And it seems that the people that had relationships with their sphere of influence where they really knew what was happening, those people have stayed really busy. The people that were just buying leads and stuff like that, those are the ones that, I've talked to and they're hurting. I mean,
What a
they're,
great point. I never thought about kind of digging into that, and yeah, I guarantee you that the folks that rely on purchasing leads right now are dried up versus the kind of relational based
right.
agents out there. That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally
And,
agree.
and so we were talking about that and, part of our conversation, because just like we've had a bunch of virtual happy hours and stuff like that.
Yep.
There's part of what so iBuyers are kind of popping back out, right? Not all over the place,
Hmm.
not everywhere. Home Partners of America, which is a huge one, still on the sidelines, but they have a lot
Yep.
of rental and a lot of leasing and stuff. But there's so some of the bigger ones, OfferPad's what opened up back in two or three markets now, and
Yeah.
they're purchasing and also the delinquency rates. I think we touched on this last week. The delinquency rates have spiked a little bit. This is probably going to cause some more of that in the market, right?
Hmm.
So people are going to probably start paying a little bit more attention to that than they have in the past, right?
Yeah. Totally.
And
I mean, those are awesome data sets. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, and so all of this kind of circles us back to mentally and physically, we gotta stay healthy. And
Right.
so that's the balance between the two of these things. And you and I were talking right before we got on, and we were talking about he played soccer in college. In case you guys didn't know that, played soccer through his whole youth career, and then got into college soccer. My son absolutely loves soccer. My daughter loves soccer. So ergo, I love soccer, right? And we were talking about Bundesliga, right? And Angela
Yeah.
Merkel, the prime minister basically said, "Hey, look, we're gonna shut everything down just long enough to slow Corona down. We're gonna open the gates back up and start playing
I
games."
thought it was hilarious. I was like, oh, well played. I'm
Yeah,
excited for it. I think there's going to be a lot of Bundesliga fans that, maybe are used to watching, Premier League or MLS or Spanish, level one. But
Right.
Yeah,
Everybody's
I'm
gonna.
psyched.
I know, right? Everybody's going to be so excited to cheer for a team. They don't care which team it is. The diehards for, whoever they were, they're like, this is my team. They're just going to be sitting there crying in their beer with whoever's playing, man. They're just going to be so
What's
happy.
funny about that is, yeah, like I've been watching a ton of like sports documentaries at night, and
Yeah, yeah,
one of them is the Man City documentary, Manchester
yeah,
City.
yeah.
Fantastic, like Pep Guardiola, like this whole wonderful documentary. But Matt, I hate Man City with a passion.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Like and it sounds so cheesy and American of me to say, but like Manchester United has always been my team, like
Right,
always.
right.
But I love the Man City thing. So it's funny that you bring up like it doesn't matter. People are gonna watch it even if they
Absolutely.
can't stand, whatever. But it's I find myself doing that right now.
So check this out. So this is I'm not as big of a sit and watch sports kind of person as you are. You keep up because you love the stats and stuff, man. So
Oh yeah.
all of that is just as soon as the game comes on, you keep up with all of that, and and I love that. And I got a
Yeah.
bunch of friends that are like that. I went over to a friend's house the other day for to drop some stuff off and pick some stuff up, and his neighbor was standing there next to him, and he lives on the water. And I'm walking up, and as I walk up, they're both looking across the water, and I said, "What are y'all doing?" And he said, "We're over here," and they were joking, right? But they said, the a friend of theirs wife who's on the other side of the canal uh, is over there taking bricks out of her backyard because everybody's doing a lot of work around their house these days, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
she's taking bricks out of her backyard and she's throwing them. And both of these guys are saying, we're taking bets on how far she can throw the bricks because we miss sports so much. And so we talked for 10 minutes about just how everybody that loves sports and who is just competitive and likes watching, whether it's their team or another team and stuff like that, like Alan Crumley.
Yeah.
He's a huge Alabama fan. He played there, right?
Mhm.
But you can ask him stats about anything college football, and that guy knows it, man. He knows
Yeah.
what's going on everywhere. Saturday, he is a ghost because he's in front of probably, I see it like Tony Stark. There's 12 TVs in front of him, and he's just looking at
Tony's.
all of them, taking in
Yeah.
all the information because you can ask him. There's people that just love that. So,
Yeah.
so mentally and physically, we're at a crossroads here, right? Physically,
Uh,
it's best for us
yeah.
to stay home. But
Yeah.
mentally, we're at a point that if we stay home much longer, I
Yeah.
don't know what's going to happen, right?
So how do you weigh that, right?
I know, I know. And so you and I, we talk about mindset all the time. When it comes to a real estate agent, this means are you still doing what's up, Stu?
What's up, Stu?
Justin said, hey. Hey, Justin. Hey, there's people that are just trying to there's just people that are trying to mentally, keep it together, right? And
Yeah.
try to keep their business on track and try to keep things moving and all that kind of stuff. It's just important that we not ignore that part of this.
And it's hard for me because I'm seeing a little bit of both sides of it because my wife works for the hospital system, and my first reaction to all of this, my gut instinct, my first reaction is very kind of blunt, and that's just kind of who I am as a person. Like I get to the point really quick, and my first reaction is screw this. I'm all about life first and living and taking that in and having mental clarity, but then kind of taking a step back and letting some of the professionals do their work. And I understand. So I'm trying to be respectful.
Right.
At one point, because it's not about me. So the selfish decision is, yeah, I want to go out and do whatever I want to do. But I guess respectful and mature decision is, follow along and make sure that we're doing what we can. But Matt, it's tough right now, right? I mean, I would prefer, physically, I feel like I can, do whatever, but mentally, that's everything to me.
I completely agree. And you're not the only, we know this, you're not the only one struggling with that, right? There are a lot of people that feel like they're making a decision for them that's actually a decision for a bunch of people. When someone
Yeah.
shows a house, right? So I had one of my agents went over to a showing, and we've been pushing virtual showings pretty hard, right? If the house is vacant, we want masks, and we're following all the CDC stuff we're supposed to be following, right? And but we've had a couple of sellers lately that are basically like, yeah, I don't care about that crap. Get my property on the market and get it sold. I want showings. I want open houses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now my agents are having to basically say, hey, look, let's go to a virtual open house. Let's do it this way. And one of the sellers said, if you're not going to hold open houses and get it out there in front of the public and have people walk through this, I'm going to list with somebody else.
Yeah.
And so, we put a lot of information in our Facebook group and all that kind of stuff to basically say, here's how you handle that objection, and this is why you do it. And you let, just like whenever you're dealing with price, you let the facts and the market do the talking, right? So it's not like the agent's going, hey, you have to do this. The agent is now saying, so you're basically asking me to violate CDC guidelines, and you're asking me to violate what the police orders have told me to do. My office has a sign on it that says no gathering, right? And so you're asking, and so they're putting them in the situation where the market is dictating that conversation and not us.
Yeah.
But I understand the seller's frustration. This guy's got to move. He has to go. And there's some people that if they're losing their jobs and all that kind of stuff, there's going to be more pressure that they need to sell these houses. So we're getting into a tumultuous time, and the trained agent, in my opinion, which we're going to talk about commissions in a minute, the trained agent, this should be they should be in the catbird seat of this, right? They should be able to come out on top on this.
Totally agree.
So you do a lot of mindset work with people, right? So do you have a tip, of how people can kind of make sure that in all of this, they're kind of, not getting sideways and all that kind of stuff? What do you do in the morning?
Yeah.
On track?
So I think the biggest thing, when routine changes happen in somebody's life, the first thing to go is discipline, right? Mm-hmm. So discipline creates routine, and routine creates consistency, and consistency creates habits, period. Yep. Right. And when that routine goes away, that discipline falls off completely. And so, I find myself slipping too a little bit. So normally I'm very regimented on when I go to bed, when I wake up, when I exercise, when I get into the office, what that structure looks like. And so for a lot of people, they're looking for a new normal, but they're also kind of sliding away. And that can also be diet related. That could be, there's a lot of things that can kind of fall off just because you're not going to work at a certain time or being held accountable like you used to. So I think the easiest way to do that is the very first things that you do in the morning, I think are so important. They set the precedent for the day. So I always like to set structure up in my morning. And that usually, this is, full disclosure, I'm all about coffee right away because I'm telling you, there ain't no discipline in me without coffee. I think if you can create structure straight away.
That's what I was doing. I was grabbing a drink.
Yeah. But I think that like little simple tasks, like if you can create easy tasks, and I know everyone's heard the speech or read the book, Make Your Bed, but simple stuff like, okay, I'm going to make my bed. I'm going to load the dishwasher. I'm going to take the dog out. I'm going to take the trash down. By not delaying those things, all of a sudden what you're doing is you're prioritizing your day and you're prioritizing you. And if you start that way, I think the rest of your day goes better.
I completely agree. So I think people coming out of this, that's a fantastic point. So I think people coming out of this, I think one of the first things that they should do is take a real serious look at their schedule and their habits. And I think this is a chance for them to reshape it. I think this is a chance for them to basically say, let's do it a little bit different than I have been before. Let me restructure this. Can you hear that stuff in the background of my house? Can you hear that at all, or is it picking it up?
Not really, no.
Okay, because I got some guys working on pavers in the back.
Very faintly. Yeah.
So we called them and said, hey, when all this settles down, we'd love to have you come over and work on all of this stuff and everything. And they were like, we'll wear masks, man. We'll come over right now.
We're coming.
That's how a bunch of people are. And they showed up we're staying away from them, all that kind of stuff. They're doing all the stuff that they need to do, getting it knocked out. And,
cool.
But yeah, they were like, we're not waiting. We're not waiting. We're going to go ahead and go.
But we're essential.
But that's right. But coming out of this is a chance for people to write their schedule down, right? This is a chance for you to redesign who you are. I think everybody's going to be really accepting of changes that you made if you take the time right now to do it. So especially in your real estate business, if you haven't been prospecting, so I'm going to call it prospecting because I'm going to scare everybody, right? If I didn't want to
Yeah.
scare everybody, I would say making your connections, right?
Yeah.
So if you're making your connections, you're having these conversations with people, you're talking to them, and everything is about taking care of them. You've got the next 3 or 4 or 5 weeks that you can really make an in-depth connection with 100, 150 people. And then all you do is maintain that. And that
Right.
becomes your new habit. And literally everybody wins. Think about what you're doing mentally for people. Think about what you're doing, conversationally with them, just helping put some sunshine in their life at the same time that you're establishing something for the long run that's going to help you, that we know is going to be in the end what's going to have to happen in order for you to compete with anybody that's buying leads, right?
Completely.
So
It's important though for people to understand that you can't wait until this is quote unquote back to normal or the new normal where we're back to work and the offices are open and we're showing regularly and stuff like that. If you've waited till then, it's too late. You know, I
absolutely.
mean, I am like going back to that though. I think that complacency has really quietly snuck in for a lot of people without them
Oh yeah.
understanding that. And
Yep.
so I think it's a great time, like you said, it's kind of like a reset button. It's a great
Yep.
time to just be honest with yourself and be like, "Okay, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the most disciplined person in the world. I guarantee you some sort of complacency has crept into your life in some way or another. It could be like I said, it could be your routines, it could be your eating habits, it could be your exercise habits, it could be your work efficiency, all of that.
Yep.
But it's good to just be really honest with yourself and look in the mirror.
I think I completely agree. And being honest with yourself means that you're going to take a look at what was working before and what wasn't. It's not just, hey, can I
Great
hurry
point.
up and get back to what normal? This is, hey, can I get back to what I knew I should have been doing all along? Because you talked about complacency, right? It crept in. So going out to eat. So my wife and I have talked about this a bunch. We didn't, when we were young, we were broke. We didn't go out to eat a lot, right? We went out to
Yeah.
eat, we went out to eat, we went out to eat, we went out to eat. All of a sudden, this is how much we were going out to eat. Now, let me lean back because it was so you can see it. All of a sudden, that went dunk and plummeted, right? And so some places are good for you to go out and eat. For the most part, they're not. They're
You're so
expensive,
right, man.
and so that all crept in, and now this has given us a chance to stop. But what we got to be careful about is that our homeostasis is kicking in, right? We're like, okay, there's some places open. Which place for food are we going to attack first, right? Because we're like, we're going to celebrate, but then the next thing you know, that's getting back into that creep, and I can
Yeah.
feel my wallet getting thinner as it seems that we're getting healthier, right? So this is a chance to stick with some habits that are just going to be really good habits all the way around for us if we
We
just
did that
practice.
last night. I mean, Katrina and I had ever since Monday, because you're allowed to go back to restaurants and it's like
Uh-huh.
25% capacity.
Right.
We had dinner out last night, and it was like the Last Supper. I was like ordering expensive wine. I had this special grouper. Like I'm like,
Right.
hell am I, man? Like, what do I think? Like, do I think I'm like from Abu Dhabi or something? Like, what's going on
That's right.
here? Like, I
Why
don't
is this
have
not on
oil
a
money.
gold? Why is this not on a gold plate? Take it
But
back to
I
the
tell you
kitchen.
what, I enjoyed the shit out of
Oh yeah.
it.
But it's such a celebration right now. To go out and
Yeah,
be almost normal is such a celebration, and that's what we've got to be careful with, especially in our real estate business. Because
yeah,
careful what we celebrate when we get back into this. Are we celebrating, taking over price listings, right? Are we celebrating getting back
awesome.
to right? So,
Yeah,
so let's talk about commissions, right? Because you and I we've discussed this a lot lately. And like I said, if
yeah,
everybody that knows Justin, you know this already. If you're listening to podcast land and you don't know Justin, he has a master's degree in finance, right? So he knows the numbers just really well. He comes from a numbers family, all that kind of stuff. So he keeps
yeah,
up with all of this kind of stuff. So what happens is as we went through the cycle, so 2002, 2003, 2004, commission dollars on average started dropping, right? And then they plummeted whenever the market plummeted. As the market started to come back, the average retained commission spiked back up almost to about 5.7% on total commission, right? Which
yep,
was huge compared to where it was. It was like 5.1% as it started to plummet, and it dropped below that, right? So in '07, '08, and '09. So it started to recover, and then in 13 it started dropping off pretty drastically again. So what that basically means is when the public feels like that the market is so good that they don't really need a real estate agent's help. that's whenever the pressure on commission really gets turned on, right? Wouldn't you agree
Right.
with that?
The sellers dictate commissions, right? So,
Right. That's right.
that totally makes sense. When you're in a heavy seller's market,
Right.
it is, there's a premium on reduction in price or commission. Actually, and what also seeps in, kind of like we talked about last week, the fear from the agent side of not being competitive, quote unquote, on
Yep.
commissions as opposed to being focused on value,
Yep.
also creeps in when it's a seller's market. So it's like
Right.
the agent's already going to that appointment thinking there's probably 3 other agents going in there. They're going to be listing the place at X%. I need to be really competitive with that, as opposed to just focusing on the value side. So I think it's twofold. I think it's the seller deciding, and I think
Yep.
it's the agent kind of subconsciously deciding.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And the funny part is the gap whenever it comes to for sale by owners, right? So in a heavy seller's market, it's about 11 or 12% that are for sale by owners that sell by themselves, right?
Yep.
In a buyer's market, it's about 9%. So we're
Yeah.
talking about a 2.5, maybe let's say 3 if the numbers are off, gap between the two of those. So it's not like the seller's really going to say, if you don't list with me, I'm going to go this, right? So all of that is part of it. It's not like they're going to say, I'm going to go sell it myself, which is what a lot of agents are worried about.
Right.
What they're doing is they're competing with themselves and the other agents in the market because they don't think that their value is going to help them offset that. So that's really what drives that number. And according to NAR, what is it? 14%, the average for sale by owner sells 14% lower than market value, right?
Yeah.
So they give up, they cut off their nose despite their face in a lot of situations. So now what's going to happen is I think people are going to feel like they need service, right?
Totally
So I
agree.
think there's a really good chance that people are like, okay, I'm not sure how to navigate this. I don't know what's going on. Let me call my professional that I have, and let me
Yeah.
see if they can help me out, right?
Yeah. No,
So
that
does it
totally
feel
makes sense.
Yeah. So does it feel like this guy's cutting this block and right behind me to you? Because it feels like it is to me. Can you even hear it?
I can hear it, but it's so faint that it's not even it
Okay.
doesn't annoy me.
All right. Because it seems like he's asking me to hold it. So so we think that there's going to be a little bit of a spike in that average commission. Now it's not going to last long, right?
Yeah.
But they're going to want an expert. So here's the good and the bad news, right? Because you and I love to look at the good and the bad. So the good and the bad news is if the market does stay tough, what's going to happen with commissions? Average commission rate, it's going to go up.
Yeah.
Right? That's a
Yeah.
benefit. They're going to need more help. If the market, which means that agents that are full service agents are going to perform well in this market.
Right.
If the market tanks and jobs are an issue and lenders are like, no, because you've got a gap in employment and all of those things happen, it's going to become a tougher market. As it becomes a tougher market, what happens? They need help.
Right.
Right? So for a short period of time here, at least, it's going to be a good thing for us. If we just go back to a completely normal market, it'll be a short period of time, and then the pressure will be back on the commission in a completely different way. So I'm interested to see what happens. And
I think the survivors, just like it's being proven right now, I think that the survivors through all of this, realtor-wise, are the people who are doing the relationship-based business, and kind of like we said earlier. So I thought that was a great point in just kind of dissecting those two people who rely on leads, internet leads, or whatever they might be paying for. That
Right.
gets really expensive really quick. And I know a lot of local agents who do a really good knock-up job at purchasing leads. And whatever your conversion rate might be, it changes, whatever. But if you're spending $10,000 to $30,000 a month on internet leads, that all of a sudden that well is drying up and could continue to dry up. Because if we're talking about people wanting to travel and people wanting to purchase long term, those internet leads probably shallow out, because the vaccine thing, right, is like 18 months.
Right.
So, if I'm a betting man, I'd be getting off of that horse for the next 18 months and really focusing on that relationship-based side.
Completely agree. And I think a lot of people will have to. So what that means though, so if there's 50 people doing it, and 45 of them doing it, the 5 that are left, it's going to work really well for them because there's still a quantity of it happening. So where the problem is going to be is if there's 50 of them doing it, which there's a hell of a lot more than 50, but just as an example, if there's 50 of them doing it and only 25 get off of it, that other 25 is still going to be hit high cost, low conversion, right?
Yep.
So what's going to happen over time is that's going to trickle down, right? So it's going to trickle to that number. So it's going to start a little bit. And then the next thing you know, right before, so I hope everybody in podcast land is listening to this, right? So the best thing to do is get away from those leads now, give it 12 or 14 months, step back in when a bunch of people have finally said uncle and didn't have the money to do it. That's whenever you step back in, because what will happen is the number of people buying them is going to drop. The cost is going to drop. Those lead resources are going to need new blood in there. They're going to be willing to make a deal for you. So right as everybody is finally getting out, it's time to get back in, right?
Yeah.
So if you're somebody that focuses on buying leads, absolutely, you need to pay close attention to that strategy. Now you
or
can
ask right now for that cost reduction from Zillow or for whatever it might be. Say, hey, listen, if I'm going to stay on board and tow your line, you need to buck up too.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Absolutely.
So something like that kind of, I don't want to cut you off, but something that I thought of too, and this is going to sound mean towards maybe a good bit of the demographic. What I'm excited about is getting rid of this market is washing out the part-time or the half-ass realtors. And I'd look anybody in the eye and say that. I'm excited for that because I've always thought that the barriers to entry has been too low. You think the same. We talk about this often. But I'm excited for the true professionals to stick around, the people who treat this seriously, the people who do a knock-up job. The rest of them, hit the trail, go do whatever else you're going to do.
Yeah, what'd your brother say last week on the podcast? He said, he said, I don't have a real good view of agents in general. He said, there's no way I would deal with something that's this big of a deal without having a trusted person to work with, without having somebody that's reliable, that knows what they're doing, right? And he's in sales, so he knows this. He's not guessing at what he wants, and I think he speaks for a lot of people in that. So I completely agree. I do think that's gonna wash some of that out. And I never have a problem with that type of washout. I
agree
that we get those people out of here.
It's good for that, and the good companies will rise, the good brokers will rise. People will start to see more value proposition when you're talking about a real value-based company or things like that. I think that the fly-by-night brokerages and the fly-by-night managers and stuff like that, they're gone too. Yeah.
Already seeing it. Yeah. Already seeing it.
Awesome.
Which I love that. Yeah. I love that too.
Yeah.
So at one point in the future, we should dig a little bit more into that, about what this is going to mean to some other brokerages and how they position themselves. Because I think the biggest thing is the new normal on this is going to be focused on video, is going to be focused on some things that, you and I have talked a lot about already when we spoke at Elevate. We did that with the Palm Media guys. We talked a lot about that. Lacey was there. She discussed a lot of that. All of those things are all a big part of how to keep connected going forward in the future. And there are some brokerages that just are fighting it. I mean, they don't want their agents doing it, let alone are they doing it. And, they're telling them things like, no, you got to be belly to belly and face to face. And I'm not dismissing that. You absolutely have to be that way. But there's a culture of curated content that people are really comfortable making sure that they're looking at only what they want to look at. You know what they don't want to look at? What they don't want to look at. And you know what they don't have to look at? What they don't have to look at.
Human nature.
So it is. And so now it's in the power of their hands. So we got to dig into that next time maybe. Okay.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Cool. So I love it. I know you got to get back to it. I got to get back to it. Right.
Yeah. As always, people, like, comment, subscribe, tell everyone about Brokers Open Podcast. We're curious as to your thoughts. And if you have any questions or want to bring anything up, let us know.
And whatever you'd like to talk about, if there's a topic you want to talk about, just let us know. And when it starts to get safe again, guys, we'll start having some of those great guests back on that we had in the past. I know we could do it by Zoom, but a lot of people have a bunch of things going on in their life, and we've tried to be respectful of that. But as soon as we can get a little bit back more to normal on that, we'll have some guests on here.
Yep.
And we had a couple of really cool ones lined up that we can reel back in. Once that happens, I promise they're big names. Speaking of sports, I promise they're big names. Everybody will know who they are. So we'll get them on here. But like Justin said, like and subscribe. comment, notifications, swipe up, whatever it is that you do to make sure that you win.
Have a great weekend, guys.
All right, guys. See you.